right, welcome everybody. I'm Rye Barcott from With Honor. Great to have you here. Great to be back at the SALT conference. I'm here with two distinguished guests that both sit on the For Country Caucus, which is a bipartisan caucus in Congress, one of the more productive in Congress. It's passed over 150 laws, mostly focused in national security, national service, and Veterans Affairs. Congresswoman Mikie Sherrill, great to have you here and is coming back to the SALT conference. Congresswoman Sherrill is a Navy vet, a former lieutenant and a pilot, and she's joined by Congressman Steve Womack, a Army National Guard colonel and a member of Congress who is on the Appropriations Committee and is also on the For Country Caucus. With Honor helps elect and support principled veterans that pledge to really focus on getting things done and working across party lines in a very difficult time to do that. We've got about 20 minutes today. We'll talk a little bit about the work, but would love to just start off with some of the background on your own military service and how that informed your approach in joining this body of a different type of conflict, where the bullets aren't necessarily real, but coming at you in different ways. So maybe if I could, with Congresswoman Sherrill, if you could just share a little bit more about your own journey from military service to political service now.
Sure. So my grandfather was a pilot in World War II. He flew missions over occupied France and was shot down, and had really inspired me to want to go into the military. So I went to the Naval Academy, served for almost 10 years as a helicopter pilot. And, you know, it's something that is probably hard to imagine if you do any work with Congress, but in my helicopter squadron, I probably couldn't have told you the political affiliation of the majority of people in my squadron. I probably would have guessed Republican at that time, but it was about our mission. As I jokingly would say in my district, there were never any Democratic missions or Republican missions. It was simply about serving the country and coming together. And I think, you know, the proposition that you talked to me about as you helped to form the work that was being done for the For Country Caucus was this idea that veterans could bring that to Congress, that in this time of partisan divide where we were finding it difficult to trust one another across the aisle, that veterans had that built-in trust. We've worked on missions. We knew people's backgrounds. We probably have mutual acquaintances or people that can verify that he's a good guy or she's a good person, and could come together and work together. And as you remember, it hasn't been easy. It hasn't been easy, but I think you've kept the faith, even when I'll say at times I lost the faith in this, but this proposition that we just at these kind of difficult moments in our nation have to remain committed to the work of Congress and getting things accomplished for our district and our nation.
And thanks to Congresswoman Sherrill for being there from the very beginning of this caucus, which started off with veterans, most of whom had served in Iraq or Afghanistan and were first and second term veterans. And they looked up to individuals like Congressman Womack. Our first co-chair, Congressman Don Bacon, said that if there is one member of Congress that I want to emulate, it's Steve Womack. And that was because of your principles and your leadership, sir. Could you share with us some of your own experience of coming from military service to service in Congress?
Sure, Rye. Thank you, and what a great honor to be here. So I was commissioned 45 years ago, May 12th, 1979, in an ROTC program in a small school in Arkansas. I followed a father who was a retired colonel, a brother, a West Point graduate, two sisters who served, and a little brother that also served. So military service always been part of my family. And so I went along with it, thinking, yeah, I'll do this thing. I'll get commissioned, and then I'll do my initial 5 or 6 years, and then I'm out. I wanted to grow my hair out. I wanted to join a fraternity. I wanted to do all the things that Mikie couldn't do at the Naval Academy. And then I enjoyed serving so much, I ended up doing it for 30 years, 5 months, and 19 days, and retired as an 06 colonel. And I'll never forget in 09, when I retired, I had this void in my life. I'd always served. I served my country, and it was important to me. And then The opportunity to run for Congress came in 2010, and I ran for Congress, and I found another way to serve my country, and that was 14 years ago, and here we are today. So now, some 14 years later, I'm a defense appropriator, a senior defense appropriator. I'm the chairman of the board of the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. Sorry, Mikie. Commander-in-Chief's trophy winner. Let me add that.
I don't think anybody asked.
And nothing gives me more pride than to wake up every morning and try to do the very best I can for my country, which is why the With Honor organization and the For Country Caucus is so important to this country. And that is, it brings Republicans and Democrats together with a shared vision and a shared motivation, if you will, and a shared desire to serve their country. And as Mikie said, it's not about Republicans and Democrats when we're together. It's about what does the country need? And that's why For Country is pretty important to me.
Well, it's obviously going very much against the grain of what most Americans hear these days as we're fighting these culture wars and these tribal wars. I wonder if both of you could maybe share an example of an experience that you have with someone from across the aisle. And Congressman Womack just recently returned from Baltimore. You do an outstanding series at the end of each week for your constituents and those who care about serious issues that the country faces, called Comment from the Capitol, where you visited Baltimore and you met with Governor Wes Moore, who was the first advisory board member for With Honor before he ran for office, and was the first candidate that we supported as a gubernatorial candidate. Congressman Womack, could you maybe share with us a little bit about that experience with Governor Moore?
Well, let's go back before then, Rye, to the With Honor Gala, where I first met Wes Moore. Never met him before. I'd read a little bit about him, knew his position. But now I chair the Transportation and Housing and Urban Development Subcommittee of the House Appropriations Committee. So naturally, when a maritime disaster hits, like the Dolly hitting the Key Bridge, it's going to put my subcommittee and the Appropriations Committee square in the middle of the discussion. There are a lot of things that have to happen between now and the time we rebuild that bridge, but we're going to have a major role in it. So we went up and did the tour. Governor Moore joined us, had an opportunity to interact with him yet again, and I've been with him a couple of different times. And this is what I note about Wes Moore, and that is that often a disaster is what it takes to kind of expose leadership. And I saw Wes leading by example from the moment the bridge hit the river, and he continues to lead. And then I hear today that the Dolly is now back in port, and he was told early on that it would be 6 to 9 months before that could happen. And here it's been just a few weeks, and very soon that federal channel will be fully open. And if you could go up and sit, as I did, with the unified command and listen to how he's got every function of government actually working together. No turf battles, nobody trying to get credit or pass blame. It is strictly a command that is purposed in righting this terrible hardship, not only on Maryland but on our country. And he told me that day that he felt like that his ability to lead from that perspective was just his military experience kind of taking over. And so I have an enormous amount of respect for Wes Moore. It's not a Republican or a Democrat thing at all. It's about recognizing true leadership in action.
Terrific. It's just a wonderful conversation, and it's on our website at withhonor.org. I'd encourage everybody to look at it, but also share it. Like, this narrative, this counter narrative, is what this country was built on, of getting things done, hard things done, with people that you don't necessarily agree with, but can have an adult conversation about things that really matter. Congresswoman Sherrill, could I ask a similar question of you with regard to the work that you've done with your Republican counterparts in For Country, and which you're now the vice chair of?
Well, to your point, talking to people in the For Country Caucus gives you these legislative ideas. And often it starts in the area of military or veterans affairs. And so Don Bacon and he was the original chair. We're both in the For Country Caucus. We both sit on the House Armed Services Committee, and we're both very concerned about our nation's GPS for various reasons and different briefings we've been in. So we co-chair the GPS caucus. So that sort of began our work together, related more to a national security issue. And yet later, when we were having auto theft problems in my district, and we put together a piece of auto theft legislation and realized that Nebraska was having similar issues, it was natural to turn to Don Bacon, who my team had worked with before, to put together a piece of auto theft legislation. And what's important about that is, moving beyond just the veteran space, that's the easy space for us to operate in. You're going to find very few people in the For Country Caucus who don't care deeply about national security issues or veterans affairs issues. But it's great when we can move beyond that, because to pass legislation in Congress, you have to form broad coalitions of people. And to continue over several Congresses to try to get your legislation passed, if the majority switches hands, you need an advocate on the other side of the aisle. So this partisanship really pulls at the fabric of our institution, which is why this organization, I think, is so important to us as we try to figure out ways to continue to get good legislation passed.
Yeah. And of course, our mission is not just about veterans. It's about fighting polarization in Congress. Congress, of course, used to be 70% veteran. Now it's below 20%. And we help elect a group of veterans that take this pledge to work across party lines. Delighted to have two members of our board, Khalil Byrd and Igor Yablokov, here today as well. Could we get, maybe with the last 5 minutes, focusing on what could be done to address polarization and making Congress more effective? Congressman Womack, maybe if I could turn it first to you.
Well, there are some strategic things that need to be done, but there are some more tactical things that need to be handled first. For example, we need to get out of this whole notion that one member can file a motion to vacate the chair and fire the Speaker of the House. Think about this. This had never happened before in the history of our country. And last October, we fired a Speaker of the House because it was possible for one member to file a motion to vacate, and then it happened. So that's one of many items that Congress is going to need to fix. If the American people can't fix it, we have to fix it. So we have to look, first of all, introspectively to ourselves, and what can we do to remove the barriers to having more meaningful accomplishment in the legislative process. And I'll say this, and then I'll yield, and that is, today in America, there's only about 30 to 40 seats in the House of Representatives, 435 strong, that are in play. The rest of them are pretty much a function of redistricting and gerrymandered boundaries that create safe districts, about 200 on each side. There's only about 35 or 40 seats that are even in play. So that tells me that everything we do, if it's going to be meaningful and beneficial to the country, it's going to probably have a bipartisan flavor. So why don't we begin there? And so, but again, a few things on the near term that we need to shore up on our end, and then maybe we can begin the process of making Congress work for the American people again.
Outstanding. Similarly, any actions you think that could be done in the short term that could have long-term consequences?
Certainly in the short term, I think it's the Rules Committee as well. I'm just making sure that we have serious people on the Rules Committee committed to legislating and not, committed to sort of the political fighting that goes on. I think that's one of the, as you said, kind of tactical things to do. And then, I'm hopeful. I'm always cautious. I'm an optimist, but Congress has made me a cautious optimist. But I'm a little bit hopeful watching the relationship between Speaker Johnson and Hakeem Jeffries and seeing, I think it has taken kind of having our Congress in some ways brought to a pretty extreme situation, but to see some more cooperation working together. It's always struck me that the Speaker of the House should be the Speaker of the House. And too many times the speaker feels as if they are the speaker of the Republican Party or the speaker of the Democratic Party. And it starts when you arrive. It starts in freshman orientation. It's two separate orientations. Rarely do you cross paths. And that sort of begins this trend of separation. And I think this understanding that it's not a zero-sum game in Congress. It's not as if when Republicans lose, Democrats win, or vice versa. We're all fighting for this country. And so we want to all, in some cases, be winners as we're winning for the country, getting good legislation passed, forming the broad coalitions that we need to do. And I want to correct you. I've never heard it called the Appropriations Committee. I've only heard it called the Powerful Appropriations Committee. So he's a member of the Powerful Appropriations Committee.
Yes.
Right.
It's only powerful because that's the only bills that seem to move in the Congress.
Well, everybody, thank you for joining us. This is a solemn weekend that is coming up. It's Memorial Day weekend. A lot of us are privileged to be able to spend it enjoying ourselves and enjoying our family. But it is the weekend to honor our sacred war dead. And Congresswoman Sherrill and Congressman Steve Womack are doing that in Congress, and we'll actually be together at the National Memorial Day concert on Sunday. I encourage everybody to tune into it. The For Country Caucus will also be washing the Vietnam Wall together on Thursday. Republicans, Democrats, individuals who served in the nation's cloth, humbling themselves to get out sponges and washing those names of our over 50,000 war dead from the Vietnam War. That'll include the 4 surviving members of Congress who served in Vietnam as they pass the torch to this next generation. Thank you for being here. Tune in to withhonor.org. We could use your help. This is hard work, and we appreciate being here. Thank you.